Workers at a Georgia Hyundai plant describe a chaotic scene after an immigration raid at the facility. Crackdown, the largest so far on U.S. work sites, led to 475 arrests of mostly Korean nationals.
In early September, the Trump administration staged the largest workplace immigration raid in U.S. history at Hyundai's new electric vehicle battery plant in Georgia. Federal agents detained 475 people, most of them South Korean nationals. The factory is part of a $7 billion Hyundai Motor Group project announced in 2022, with a goal of creating more than 8,000 American jobs. The raid came only weeks after Trump raised tariffs on global partners, insisting that companies avoid penalties by moving production into the United States. Yet when Hyundai followed that policy, its project became the target of the most aggressive immigration crackdown to date. Trump defended the raid as enforcement of U.S. law, while insisting that foreign firms must train American workers if they want access to the U.S. market.
You know, the broad brushstrokes are that this has really sent a shockwave through the foreign investment community. For so many years, U.S. states like Georgia have really urged foreign companies to come and invest in the U.S. and build their products in the United States.
Work at the Georgia plant was ordered to stop immediately. Subcontractors who had supplied technical experts were sidelined, and sensitive installation work was interrupted. In projects of this scale, construction analysts note that every month of delay can add 0.5% to 1% of costs. On Hyundai's $4.3 billion battery facility, that equals between $21 and $43 million for each month of stoppage. A 2-month delay could surpass $80 million. These figures highlight how Trump's strict immigration enforcement carries a direct economic price tag for foreign investors who responded to his tariffs by building inside the United States. The larger danger is that delays will push back the planned start of production in late 2025, shifting supply to 2026 and straining the North American EV supply chain. Trump's policy may have been aimed at protecting American jobs, but it now risks disrupting investment meant to deliver them. The arrests drew a sharp reaction from Seoul. More than 300 South Korean citizens were confirmed among the detainees, and the government chartered flights to bring them home. The foreign minister traveled to Washington, calling the incident humiliating for a country that had just pledged hundreds of billions of dollars in new U.S. investment. Hyundai alone committed $26 billion through 2028. These pledges came in the context of Trump's broader tariff strategy, which has pressed allies like South Korea to shift production and capital into America. The raid, however, undercut that strategy by shaking confidence in the stability of U.S. policy. South Korean industry groups say they felt betrayed. While they acknowledge visa problems, they also stress that U.S. rules make it nearly impossible to staff complex projects without specialized foreign labor. Trump's promise of Made in USA growth is colliding with the realities of how global manufacturing actually works.
ICE was doing right because they were here illegally. But we do have to work something out where we bring in experts so that our people can be trained so that they can do it themselves. Does that make sense? Right? Is it straining the relationship with Korea at all? No, we have a great relationship with South Korea.
The Hyundai case highlights a central contradiction in Trump's second-term agenda. Tariffs are used to push investment into America, but aggressive raids and anti-immigration policies threaten the very projects that result. At the same time, Trump has made clear his skepticism toward electric vehicles, even as he calls for factories to be built on U.S. soil. For allies like South Korea, these mixed signals translate into costly uncertainty. Each month of delay is measured in tens of millions of dollars, and the images of workers led away in handcuffs resonate far beyond Georgia. For global companies, the question is whether Trump's policies are creating a secure investment climate or one defined by risk and contradiction. The Hyundai raid is not only an immigration story. It is a warning that the intersection of Trump's tariffs and Trump's enforcement agenda can undermine the very economic strategy he claims to champion.
The president teased the tariffs on semiconductors that could be set as soon as next week. Those tariffs could be between 200% and 300%.
It's bananas, it's berserk, and it's a little bit crazy all at once. President Trump has declared that tariffs of 200 to 300% on semiconductors are coming within weeks. His goal is direct: push electronics and technology companies to move production to the United States to avoid crushing costs. The plan follows a carrot and stick model, with lower rates at first and far higher ones if companies do not build factories on American soil.
I'll be setting tariffs next week and the week after on, I would say, chips. Chips and semiconductors. They don't open here. They have to pay, in some cases, 200%, 300%.
This is presented as proof of his promise to bring manufacturing back. Yet behind the rhetoric lies a policy more threatening than practical, lacking a consistent framework that industry can rely on. The timing is especially fraught. U.S.-China relations remain tense, with new threats of tariffs tied to Beijing's purchases of Russian oil. China is still the dominant exporter of rare earths to the United States, which makes Canada's resources even more significant. Some of the minerals essential to chip making are tied to Canadian supply, leaving Washington dependent in ways tariffs cannot change.
Okay, well, he actually mentioned a possible exemption for companies that manufacture here in the United States. How would that even work? He keeps saying, come this time next year, all the manufacturing that's going to happen. We see no evidence of any of those plans as of yet.
Bringing complex supply chains home in a single year is not realistic. Semiconductor production depends on infrastructure that takes years to build, from advanced fabrication plants to clean rooms and lithography equipment. It also requires thousands of skilled engineers and technicians, a workforce that cannot simply appear overnight. Most importantly, production hinges on access to raw materials. Critical minerals such as gallium, cobalt, and graphite are still largely imported, and China remains the main source of rare earths for the United States. With Washington and Beijing on opposite sides of key geopolitical disputes, the risk of disruption is high. Tariffs may create headlines, but they do not solve shortages of minerals that are essential to the modern economy. This is where Canada enters the picture. Beyond oil, gas, and uranium, Canada holds reserves of minerals vital to high-tech manufacturing.
David Eby alluded to this critical mineral when outlining how BC could help provide leverage in a tariff battle with President-elect Trump. But why? What's germane about germanium?
If the United States doesn't get this metal from the Teck smelter and trail, it's not available at all.
Germanium stands out. It is a key material in advanced semiconductor production, used to make high-speed chips and optical components that silicon alone cannot deliver. The only major North American supply comes from a smelter in Trail, British Columbia, employing about 1,500 people. Industry analysts call it indispensable for the next generation of electronics and defense technologies. If tensions with China escalate, the value of Canada's resources becomes even clearer. Washington may raise tariffs on Canadian metals or non-USMCA products, but the United States cannot easily replace Canadian germanium or other critical minerals. Ottawa therefore holds a position of leverage that tariffs alone cannot erase. In effect, pressure on Canada risks undermining the very supply chains that America is trying to secure. Canada has not stood still. Rather than rushing into a weak deal, Prime Minister Mark Carney has emphasized patience and rebuilding capacity at home.
We're talking about steel, auto, new sectors of the economy, including artificial intelligence, what we're doing in terms of making Canada competitive. Good to see you.
At a meeting with Ontario Premier Doug Ford in Ottawa this August, both leaders highlighted the importance of reinforcing steel, auto, and semiconductor sectors while investing in artificial intelligence. Their approach is to strengthen competitiveness internally, rather than depending on unpredictable decisions in Washington. Support packages for industries affected by U.S. tariffs are being paired with plans to expand critical mineral projects, including more than a dozen developments in British Columbia. These projects, worth tens of billions of Canadian dollars, signal that Canada intends to expand its role as a secure supplier. Far from yielding to American pressure, Ottawa is turning tariffs into an opportunity to accelerate long-term growth. In the end, tariffs of 200 or 300% can grab attention, but factories cannot be built overnight, and essential minerals cannot be conjured at will. Without stable access to resources and cooperation from partners like Canada, the vision of a fully self-sufficient U.S. manufacturing base will remain beyond reach. What is unfolding is not only a tariff battle. It is a contest between political theater and economic reality. And in that contest, Canada holds more leverage than Washington might care to admit.
Well, right now, postal services worldwide are halting shipments to the United States.
An executive order signed by President Trump last month, goods coming in from abroad less than $800 will be slapped with country-specific tariff rates starting Friday.
It started with a single executive order. President Donald Trump abolished the de minimis exemption, the rule that had allowed parcels worth under $800 to enter the United States duty-free. By Friday, that exemption was gone. The impact was immediate. Postal services in Australia, India, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and across Europe suspended shipments to the United States, and the shock was felt in North America as well.
Now, as if Donald Trump's tariffs aren't inflicting enough pain, now Canadians running a small business are bracing for higher costs as the U.S. ends the exclusion from shipping fees.
Canada, America's closest trading partner, saw small businesses scrambling to keep sales flowing south of the border. Millions of parcels cross between the two countries each year, and the removal of this rule struck at the core of cross-border commerce. What was meant to protect America was in fact disrupting the continent's own supply chains.
The White House said the change was needed to protect American industries and block dangerous goods like fentanyl. But the first and hardest blow fell on American consumers and retailers.
The vast majority of my customer base is in the US. I can't pass this on to my customers. So as of last night, I've had to close my store completely.
Online sellers who rely on imports suddenly faced suspended shipments. Small shops that stocked foreign products prepared to raise prices or close their doors. For households, the costs arrive almost overnight. New duties are tied to country-specific rates ranging from 10 to 50%. NBC News reported they translate into flat fees of about $80 per item for countries with lower rates, $160 for mid-range, and $200 for the highest brackets. Analysts warned these changes could add up to $13 billion in extra consumer costs. Logistics firms also pulled back. DHL, one of the world's largest couriers, said it would stop accepting parcels bound for the United States until key details were clarified. Instead of securing America, the policy created delays, higher prices, and confusion at home.
While many countries froze shipments altogether, Canada chose a different approach. Canada Post confirmed it would not suspend service. Instead, it introduced a system to collect the new duties and transfer them to U.S. Customs. For Canadian parcels, most are now subject to a 35% tariff, reflecting the non-CUSMA rate set earlier in August. It is costly, but it preserves access to the market. This stood in sharp contrast with other partners. In Australia, small exporters halted sales to the United States because they could not guarantee what fees customers would face. In Europe, postal agencies admitted they needed more time and paused deliveries until new systems were built. Canada, by contrast, kept goods flowing. In the face of Trump's abrupt policy, Ottawa ensured businesses still had a path into their largest export destination. The contrast is clear. Trump's decision was supposed to protect the United States, but it left American families and small shops paying more while major couriers suspended service. Canada, facing the same disruption, adapted quickly. By maintaining its postal link, it preserved market share while competitors in Europe and Asia were locked out. This is more than a technical fix. It reinforces Canada's role as a stable partner in North America. Prime Minister Mark Carney has argued that Canada will only sign agreements that serve its interests. That stance is reflected here. While others cut connections, Canada proved it could keep commerce moving under new rules. For the United States, the question is whether these tariffs strengthen or weaken the economy they were meant to defend. For Canada, the lesson is sharper. In the midst of global confusion, it found a way to turn crisis into opportunity, showing that resilience and pragmatism can be its greatest advantage.